I'm Ethan. I'm 36, a single dad of two, and I'm the kind of guy who brings a toolbox to a family party because someone's always asking for help with a leaking faucet or a light fixture. My daughter, Zoe, just turned 8, sharp as a tack, and always asking questions like she's interviewing the world. My son, Max, is 5 and thinks every couch is a trampoline. They're both a handful in the best way. Ever since my ex and I split 3 years ago, it's been just the three of us. I learned how to braid hair and patch up knees, how to juggle school pickups with last-minute client calls, and how to pretend I wasn't bone-tired when Max wanted just one more bedtime story. I'm not perfect, but I show up. Every day. And my family, well, they show up when it's convenient. I grew up in a typical suburban household. Dad was a dentist, Mom was a substitute teacher who never wanted a full-time job, and my younger brother Jason, golden boy, high school football star, Mom's pride and joy. Jason could crash a car and my parents would somehow blame the road. I could get a raise and they'd ask if Jason helped me with the interview. That kind of dynamic. As we got older, I stopped trying to compete for attention. I moved out at 20, started a home renovation business with a friend, and quietly built a decent life for myself. Nothing flashy, but enough to own a home, pay my bills, and set aside something for the kids. Jason stayed close to home. Married his high school sweetheart, no kids, works in IT, something vaguely tech-related that none of us understand but sounds important enough to nod at during dinner. They live 20 minutes from my parents and visit all the time. My parents watch their dog when they go on vacation, water their plants, drop off meals, just because. Meanwhile, I'm lucky if my mom remembers Max's birthday without a Facebook reminder. And yet, every year, I show up for the family holiday party. It's tradition. Mom makes her overcooked turkey. Dad plays the same Dean Martin album. And Jason hosts now that he has the space. His house looks like it was ripped out of a crate and barrel catalog. Modern, sterile, and not meant for kids who want to build pillow forts. Still, I've always brought Zoe and Max. It's important to me that they know their extended family, even if it's a little stiff and awkward. Even if Jason looks like he'd rather be anywhere else when Max accidentally spills juice on his white rug. Last year, Zoe sang a little song she made up about reindeer, and no one clapped. Not even a smile. Jason was too busy showing my dad some new gadget, and my mom was watching my niece's TikTok on loop like it was a Broadway show. I remember crouching next to Zoe and whispering. I thought it was beautiful, and she hugged me and said, I liked it even if they didn't. That one sentence. It stayed with me all year. So this year, when the group chat for the holiday party went out in early December, I replied like always. Me plus 2, Zoe and Max. We'll bring cookies. No one responded. 2 days later, Mom called. Not to say hi. Not to ask how the kids were. Just straight to the point. Ethan, we were wondering, maybe this year you could come without the kids. I actually laughed. I thought she was joking. Why would I do that? She hesitated. Well, last year there were a few things. Spills. Noise. It was just a lot. They're kids, Mom. I know, but Jason's house isn't exactly child-proof, and we just want things to go smoothly. No drama this year. No drama. That phrase stuck in my head like a splinter. I could hear Jason in the background, probably coaching her through the call. My jaw clenched. I didn't say anything for a few seconds because I knew if I opened my mouth right away, I'd regret it. Finally, I said, so I'm not welcome unless I come alone? We're not saying that. Just, maybe it would be best. I hung up. I didn't say anything to the kids right away. What could I say? Hey, you know the people you think are your grandparents and uncle? They'd prefer you not show up this year because you're inconvenient. No, I let it sit. I let it burn a little. A few days later, Jason posted a picture on Facebook. A photo of him, my parents, and his wife in front of their tree, matching pajamas, all grins. The caption? Family only. Peace at last. That was the moment. That was the spark that lit the whole thing. I didn't even hesitate. I shared the post with my own comment. Perfect. So the taxes, bills, and maintenance are yours now. 10 minutes later, the post was gone, and my phone wouldn't stop ringing. First Mom, then Jason, then Dad, then Mom again, then Jason again. I watched them light up my screen like it was a call center on fire. But I didn't answer. I just stared at the phone, then at the fireplace where Zoe and Max were hanging stockings we made from felt and glitter. Zoe was humming her reindeer song again. That's when the plan started forming in my head. A quiet kind of revenge. The kind you don't see coming until the foundation under your feet is already gone. You see, what Jason forgot, what they all forgot, is that while they were playing perfect family for social media, I was the one holding everything together behind the scenes. The taxes, the insurance, the shared property our grandfather left us. The utilities my name was on because no one else wanted the hassle. The cabin they all love to escape to. The one they think just magically stays stocked and maintained. Yeah, that's mine. They never noticed the paperwork. They never asked. But they were about to. And I had every intention of letting the truth unravel slowly, painfully, and publicly. But first, I had to wait. Wait for the next move. Wait for the moment they realized I wasn't just sulking, I was done. And when it came harder than I expected. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because something in me had shifted. You know that feeling when a puzzle finally clicks into place? When a truth you've been trying not to admit for years finally lands with full weight in your chest. That's what it felt like. Like I'd been playing along in a game I was never meant to win, and now I saw it for what it was. A performance. And I was the stage crew, never meant to be in the spotlight, just there to keep the show running. The next morning, I made pancakes shaped like stars for Zoe and Max. I sat with them, laughed with them, even let Max put whipped cream on my nose. I didn't tell them about the phone calls or the post. I didn't tell them we weren't going to Jason's this year. I just soaked in their joy, their innocence. Because that was mine. I built that. Not my parents. Not Jason. Me. By noon, I had 10 missed calls and 4 texts from Jason. Real mature. You trying to make mom cry? You always make everything about you. We'll talk when you've cooled off. I didn't respond. I knew him too well. Jason always believed that if he ignored a problem long enough, someone else, usually me, would fix it. That's how it had always been. When he totaled Dad's car at 19, I'm the one who called the tow truck and sat with him at the police station. When he couldn't afford his first condo's HOA fees, I loaned him the money, which he never paid back. When his wife threw a fit over the power being out at the cabin last winter, guess who drove 2 hours in the snow to reset the breaker and replace the generator? Me. Not because he asked, because no one else would. But something about that photo caption, family only, peace at last, was a slap I couldn't unfeel. It wasn't just a passive-aggressive jab. It was a declaration. I'd been excluded. Worse, my kids had been excluded. And for what? For being inconvenient? For not fitting into their curated version of a perfect holiday? I could have let it go. I could have smoothed it over, like I always did. But that version of me, he was gone. And I didn't want him back. The real breaking point came 3 days later. I was at the hardware store picking up salt for the driveway when I got a call from my Aunt Marie. Now, Aunt Marie is my mom's older sister, lives in Florida most of the year, but she comes up for Christmas with her dog, Louie, and her sarcasm. She doesn't sugarcoat anything. Ethan, she said, without so much as a hello, are you really not coming to the party this year? Did Mom tell you what she said to me? She said you overreacted, that you made a scene. But I've known your mother for 65 years, and I know when she's leaving something out. I explained everything. The call, the comment, the Facebook post, the sudden concern for drama. She was quiet on the other end, save for the occasional sip of what I assumed was coffee or wine. They told me you didn't want to come, she said finally. They said the kids were sick and you were too busy with work. My hand tightened around the cart handle. They what? Yeah. And then Jason made a crack about how it's probably for the best. More seating for people who don't bring chaos with them. I nearly threw my biscotti at him. I let out a sharp breath. Thanks for telling me. I didn't call for thanks. I called because I want to know what's really going on. You've been the only one holding that family together for years, and I'm sick of watching them pretend otherwise. It was the first time in a long time someone acknowledged it out loud. After we hung up, I sat in my truck for a long time. The kids were with their mom that day, so I didn't have to pretend to be fine. I stared out at the icy parking lot and thought about every time I'd covered for them. Every time I'd let something slide because it was easier than starting a fight. Every time I told myself, it's just how they are. No more. I drove home and pulled out the fireproof safe from my closet. Inside were all the documents no one else cared about until now. The deed to the cabin, which our grandfather left to the grandchildren, plural, in his will. The utility bills, all in my name. The LLC paperwork I'd filed to manage the cabin expenses, with myself as sole managing partner. The maintenance receipts, the repair invoices, the photos of Jason's dog chewing through the deck rails that I'd paid to replace. All of it. I started scanning and organizing. Not to start a fight, to build a timeline. Because if they wanted to treat me like I wasn't part of the family, they were about to find out what family really meant, legally, financially, and emotionally. The next text came from my mom. Honey, let's not make this bigger than it is. We're all tired. Jason didn't mean anything by the post. Can you please stop stirring things up? I stared at it. No apology. No accountability. Just deflection. As always. That's when I knew they didn't think they'd done anything wrong. That's when I realized they weren't going to change. I typed back. You asked me not to bring your grandchildren because you didn't want drama. Jason made a public post mocking us. And now you're asking me to be quiet so you don't have to feel uncomfortable. I'm not stirring things up. I'm just done pretending this is normal. She didn't reply. The party went on without us. I saw the photos through mutual friends. Jason carving the turkey like he was in a Hallmark movie. My parents posing in front of the fireplace. Aunt Marie sitting stiffly with Louis on her lap, and an expression that screamed, I hate all of you. The caption this time was simply, grateful for those who show up. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so performative it almost felt like satire. That night, Zoe asked if we were going to Grandma's house tomorrow. I looked her in the eyes and said, not this year, sweetheart. We're doing our own thing. Like our own holiday? Exactly. She grinned. Can we make reindeer cookies again? We can make reindeer everything. So we did. I let them decorate the living room with lights and paper snowflakes. We watched old movies, built a gingerbread house that collapsed twice before it stayed up, and made a fort in the living room where we slept that night. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't Instagram-worthy, but it was ours. Still, even with all the joy, a part of me burned. Because I couldn't stop thinking about how easy it had been for them to cut us out. How quick they were to rewrite the story, to paint me as difficult, dramatic, unstable. They'd always seen Jason as the put-together one, and me as the complicated one. But I realized now, Jason was just easier to handle. Quieter. Less emotional. He never challenged them. I did. That was my crime. A week after Christmas, I got a letter in the mail. It was from a property management company, apparently hired by Jason, to discuss formal ownership transfers and maintenance responsibility for the cabin. I read it twice. Then I laughed again. That's when I knew. He had no idea. He didn't know about the LLC. He didn't know the deed required unanimous consent for sale or transfer. He didn't even know the taxes had been paid out of my pocket for the last 6 years. He thought he could just take over because Mom and Dad told him it was his now. That was the moment I stopped being angry. That was the moment I started planning the response. But I'll get to that soon. Because right after I opened that letter, I got another surprise. One I didn't see coming. And that, well, that's when things truly exploded. The letter sat on the kitchen table for hours. I hadn't even put it back in the envelope. Just left it there, in plain view, like some kind of trophy, or maybe a crime scene. Jason had officially decided to manage the cabin. The same cabin he hadn't lifted a finger for in over a decade. The same one he once left unlocked after a weekend trip and then blamed me when the pipes froze and burst. For a brief second, I felt something sour rising in my chest. Not anger this time, exhaustion. I suddenly felt every late night I'd spent fixing a busted heater, every Saturday hauling firewood up the icy path, every receipt I'd paid out of pocket because I'll Venmo you later never came. It hit me all at once. I was tired of proving my worth to people who never even asked what it cost me to keep things running. That night, after Zoe and Max went to bed, I made myself a cup of tea and sat alone in the living room. I didn't turn on the TV. Just silence. Just me and that stupid letter and the quiet hum of the heater kicking in. And for the first time in a long time, I asked myself a question I'd been too scared to face. What would happen if I just let go? Not give up. Not run away. Just stop holding everything together. What if I stopped being the guy who shows up no matter what? What if I stopped carrying the weight of a family that never once offered to carry me? The next morning, I drafted a response to the property management company. Polite. Professional. A simple PDF with attached legal documents, titles, tax receipts, and a friendly note. This cabin is managed by an LLC under my name, as agreed upon by the inheritors in accordance with my grandfather's will. All financial responsibility, maintenance, and legal liability are presently handled through that structure. Any changes require full consent of all parties. If Jason would like to contribute to the annual costs or participate in future planning, he is welcome to schedule a meeting. Otherwise, no transfers or reassignments will be taking place. I didn't CC Jason. I wanted it to reach him secondhand. I pictured the moment he got the forwarded email. His face dropping. The confusion. The scrambling to understand what LLC meant. The dawning realization that for all his smug control over the family group chat and holiday invitations, he didn't actually own the one thing he'd bragged about taking over. But here's the twist. It didn't feel like a win. Not right away. Because what hit me after I sent that email was a sense of emptiness I hadn't expected. I'd spent years tying my value to usefulness. I was the dependable one. The fixer. The one who handled things. Now that I'd drawn a boundary, now that I'd stopped answering their calls, what was left? Just me. Ethan. Single dad. Renovation contractor. Son of two people who didn't call on Christmas. Brother to someone who pretended I didn't exist unless he needed something. And for a little while, that reality broke me. A few weeks into January, the silence from my family grew louder. No follow-up from mom. No apology. No, how are the kids? Just total radio silence. I saw a new post from Jason. He and his wife had flown to Aspen for a ski trip. The caption was, "Sometimes distance is the best medicine." A not-so-subtle jab, I guess. Fine. Let them have their peace. But something inside me had cracked open, and I couldn't close it again. The space they left behind? I started filling it. It started with small things. Fixing up the basement. Not because it needed it, but because I'd always put it off. I painted the walls a warm shade of navy, added shelves for Zoe's books, and a little art corner for Max. We built a Lego city down there. Weeks of construction, tiny roads and towers, and even a coffee shop built from mismatched bricks. Max named it Zoe's Beans. I started journaling again. Nothing fancy, just thoughts. Things I never said out loud. The pain of always being the second choice. The way my mom used to dismiss my feelings with a quick, "Don't be so sensitive." The way Jason rolled his eyes when I talked about my business like it was a hobby. Writing it down didn't make it disappear, but it made it real. Tangible. Mine. And then, something unexpected happened. A client I'd done some kitchen remodeling for a year ago referred me to a friend. Then that friend referred me to someone else. Suddenly, I had more work than I could handle. One project turned into three. A small bathroom remodel turned into a whole home renovation. I started hiring help. A buddy from college who was between jobs. Then a subcontractor for electrical work. Before I knew it, I wasn't just getting by, I was growing. Zoe noticed the change before I did. "Daddy," she said one night while we were making grilled cheese, "you smile more now." I blinked. "I do. Yeah. You don't look tired all the time." That hit me harder than it should have. Because she was right. I'd spent so long running on fumes, trying to meet expectations that weren't mine. Now that I wasn't chasing their approval, I had energy left over for things that actually mattered. We started new traditions. Sunday night pancakes in pajamas. Friday movie marathons where Zoe picked the film and Max fell asleep halfway through. On Valentine's Day, Zoe made cards for her whole class, and Max drew one for me that said, "You are the best cook and the best fix guy." I didn't cry. Okay, I cried a little. And then came the call that changed everything. Late February. I was knee-deep in retiling a client's bathroom when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway, expecting a potential customer. "Hi, is this Ethan Rhodes?" "Yes. This is Olivia Morgan. I work with Wyndham Properties. Your name came up in a meeting about historical renovations. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Wyndham Properties was a huge firm that handled commercial restorations, often for historical buildings. I'd applied for a subcontracting role years ago and never heard back. "I'm listening." She explained they were overseeing a renovation on an old downtown bank being turned into an art gallery and cafe. They were looking for someone who could manage the interior woodwork and layout while preserving original features. My name had been recommended twice. "Would you be interested in a meeting?" I could barely believe it. We set a date. I walked into that meeting with blueprints under my arm and a voice in my head saying, "They're going to laugh you out of the room." But they didn't. Olivia was warm, thoughtful, and had done her homework. "We liked how you balanced modern design with original features in the Lambert House remodel," she said. The client raved about the staircase. I blinked. You actually read my case file? Of course. You're good, Ethan. I got the contract. 6 months. Full creative input. Real money. Real recognition. That night, I sat on the porch after the kids were asleep. I had a cup of tea in one hand and Max's drawing in the other. The stars were out. The air was cold, but not sharp. And I let myself feel it for once. Pride. Not the kind you post about. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing you built something, not for applause, but because it mattered to you. And then, like clockwork, the past came knocking. A text from Mom. First one in weeks. Your father isn't feeling well. We're worried. Can we talk? The timing wasn't lost on me. I'd finally found peace, and now the strings were being pulled again. A part of me ached. I didn't want Dad to be sick, but I also knew better than to walk back into that house without asking myself, what am I walking into? What am I willing to tolerate? What do I owe and to whom? I didn't answer. Not right away, because I had one more thing to handle. Something Jason didn't see coming. And it started with a letter of my own. I didn't respond to my mother's text that night. I read it twice, once as her son, and once as the man I'd become. The first version of me, the old Ethan, would have jumped into the car the second she said, Dad isn't feeling well. He would have brushed off the months of silence, the exclusion, the passive-aggressive posts, and the patronizing tone in Jason's emails. He would have told himself, they're still family. They're just bad at showing it. But I wasn't that guy anymore. Something about building my own little world, my kids, my business, my own peace, had sharpened my sense of self-worth. It was no longer this fragile thing I had to protect from their judgment. Now it was anchored, not in their approval, not in their affection, but in proof, in who I'd become when they weren't looking. Still, I didn't want to ignore her completely. I wasn't cruel, just careful. So I texted back 2 days later. Hope Dad feels better soon. Let me know if there's anything specific you need. Nothing more. No emojis. No open-ended offer to talk. Just a calm, distant reply. And I meant every word. I wasn't punishing them. I was simply done bending myself backwards to earn a seat at a table where my chair was always wobbly. That message must have sparked something. Because within 24 hours, Jason called me. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, voice tight with the kind of forced calm you use when you're trying not to show panic. Hey man, just checking in. Mom said you've been busy with work. That's great. Listen about the cabin. I didn't realize you were still doing all that stuff. I thought, well, anyway, maybe we could meet. You know, clear the air. It's been long enough, right? I stared at the phone for a long time after that one. Long enough. I wondered what that even meant to him. Was there a time limit on exclusion? On disrespect? Did he think that if he waited it out long enough, I'd just forget everything? That was when the idea came. Not a rage-filled plan. Not some dramatic Hollywood revenge moment. But something quiet. Strategic. Precise. I didn't want to yell. I didn't want to explain. I wanted to show them, show everyone, what it looked like when the guy behind the curtain stepped into the light. I started with the cabin. I filed a formal amendment to the LLC bylaws. Nothing sneaky. Just long overdue. I added a clause requiring unanimous written approval from all members before any structural changes, rental listings, or property use beyond immediate family events. It was legal, fair, transparent. I had sole managing authority, after all. Then I hired a local attorney, Sarah Whitman. Smart, no nonsense, and very good at translating passive-aggressive family dynamics into bulletproof legalese. I laid everything out for her. The inheritance terms, the maintenance history, the financial records, the texts, the Facebook post, the attempted transfer. She reviewed it all. Then she looked at me and said, You've got them by the throat. But the question is, do you want to squeeze or just let them sweat? I smiled. Let's make them sweat first. She helped me prepare a formal report detailing every cost associated with the cabin over the last 10 years. Repairs, utilities, snow removal, even the time I spent fixing things myself. We included receipts, timestamps, even photos. Total cost? $47,600. We didn't demand reimbursement. Instead, we sent it as a summary of contributions and asset oversight to my parents and Jason. The tone was professional. Cold, even. The kind of document you get when someone is politely warning you that the free ride is over. Attached was a simple note from Sarah. Please be advised that any future use of the Rhodes family cabin without express written approval will be considered trespassing. Should Mr. Jason Rhodes or any other party wish to discuss contribution terms or formalize shared ownership responsibility, Mr. Ethan Rhodes is open to mediated discussion. Otherwise, continued use of the property without contractual participation will no longer be permitted. The message was clear. You don't get to exclude me, then claim the things I built. I timed the email perfectly. Wednesday, 9 a.m. sharp. I wanted them to open it with their morning coffee, right as the workday was starting, right when it would ruin their whole mood. Jason's response came 3 hours later. What the hell is this? I ignored it. Mom called that evening. Ethan, she said, voice trembling slightly, this is unnecessary. You're making a bigger deal than it needs to be. I'm protecting what's mine, I said calmly. You taught me to be responsible. I'm being responsible. This isn't how family handles things. No, I agreed. Family doesn't usually tell a father he can't bring his kids to Christmas, then post a picture saying, peace at last. That's not how family handles things either. Silence. Then she said something that stunned me. I didn't know Jason wrote that caption. I blinked. He posted the picture, Mom. I didn't know what it said. I don't have Facebook anymore. He showed me the picture, but not the caption. I didn't know whether to believe her. But part of me, just part of me, wanted to. Still, I held my line. Well, now you know. She sighed. We just want things to go back to normal. They already are, I said. My normal just doesn't include being used anymore. Click. She hung up. And that was fine. Because while that storm brewed quietly on the home front, something even bigger was taking shape behind the scenes. The Wyndham project was in full swing. By March, I was running a full team. I had a designer, 2 contractors, and an assistant. Zoe helped paint color swatches on weekends. Max called the building Dad's Castle. I documented everything, before and afters, time-lapse footage, supplier lists, workflow logs. I knew this wasn't just a job. It was the start of something permanent. My name, on something that mattered. I'd also hired a videographer to capture the process. At first it was just for marketing. But then I started uploading snippets online, short, clean clips of restoration work, explained simply. Tips, tools, behind-the-scenes shots of Zoe helping me label drawers. And something wild happened. The account took off. Thousands of followers. Then tens of thousands. People loved it. Not just the craftsmanship, but the story. A single dad building a life, one board at a time. I started getting DMs from people asking for quotes, partnerships, even sponsorships. By the end of April, I had 2 more contracts signed for spring. And then, Jason called again. This time I answered. His voice was quieter, less smug. Look, I get it now. I messed up. I didn't know all that stuff about the LLC or the taxes. Mom and Dad never told me you were paying for everything. They didn't know, I said. They never asked. He sighed. I wanted to handle things this year because I thought I could take some pressure off them, make things smoother. By excluding me, I thought you'd be okay with it. You always act like you don't need anyone. That made me pause, because I realized that was the story he'd told himself, that I was fine, that I was strong enough to be ignored, that my silence was consent. I needed respect, I said, and you all made it clear I wasn't getting any. He didn't argue. I didn't offer comfort. I'm not angry anymore, I said, but I'm not going back to how things were either. He hesitated. Are we ever going to be okay again? I don't know, Jason. But if we are, it won't be because I kept pretending you didn't hurt me. He didn't respond. Just a long breath. Then, I get it. We hung up. I wasn't sure if he really did. But it didn't matter anymore. Because the setup was complete. And the final piece? Well, that would come soon. See, they had one more surprise planned. A family event. A big one. And they thought I'd quietly stay away. But I had a different plan. And this time, I wouldn't be coming alone. They scheduled the family reunion for June. A full-blown celebration of togetherness. According to the cream-colored cardstock invitation I received in the mail, classy, embossed, with my name spelled correctly for the first time in years. There was no mention of the Christmas fallout, no acknowledgement of the months of silence, the Facebook post, the LLC, or the boundary I'd drawn in stone. But I knew what it really was. A rebrand. My family didn't do apologies. They did redirection. Invite everyone to the lake house, slap Rhodes' legacy weekend on the front, and pretend the past year was just a rough patch. Jason probably pitched it. Mom probably cried. Dad likely nodded along, too tired to argue. The goal was clear. sweep everything under a picnic blanket, and take one big smiling photo to prove the family was whole. Only this time, I wasn't the one they needed to play along. They needed me. Why? Because the lake house, the venue, was the cabin. My cabin. Of course it was. They assumed I'd be so flattered to be included again that I'd waive my rights, keep my head down, and mow the lawn like a good son. And that was their fatal mistake. See, they forgot I didn't just own the cabin on paper. I owned it emotionally, financially, and logistically. They forgot who'd kept it from collapsing all these years. And more importantly, they forgot who I'd become since they cut me out. So I RSVP'd. Not just for myself, but for Zoe, Max, and one guest. A +1. I didn't name her. Just marked the box. The silence after my RSVP was golden. No questions. No phone calls. Not even a passive-aggressive, looking forward to seeing you from Mom. I could feel the tension brewing behind the scenes. Jason pacing, Dad groaning, Mom chewing her lip and rereading the LLC email. They didn't know what I was planning, but they knew better than to cancel now. Too many guests. Too many expectations. So they waited. And I prepared. I spent the 2 weeks leading up to the reunion turning the cabin into something unrecognizable. Not in appearance. It was still the same warm wood paneling, same stone fireplace, same wraparound porch, but in control. I installed a smart lock system, updated the security cameras, and ran every utility through an app that only I had access to. Sarah, my lawyer, reviewed every inch of my revised guest agreement. Each attendee would need to sign a digital acknowledgement form for temporary access. Basic stuff. Just a formality. Until it wasn't. The morning of the event, the gravel driveway was packed with cars. SUVs, sedans, even a rental minivan. I pulled in last, just as Jason was setting up folding tables by the lake. He spotted me and froze. I stepped out of the truck with Zoe on one side, Max on the other, and Olivia, my +1, walking beside me. Olivia Morgan, from Wyndham Properties. The project manager who'd given me my biggest opportunity to date. Also a licensed mediator. And, conveniently, my new girlfriend. I hadn't planned it that way. Our connection had started slow, professional, cautious. But somewhere between site inspections and blueprint debates, we'd found a rhythm that felt easy, honest, real. I hadn't told my family about her. Not because I was hiding her, but because I no longer felt obligated to offer them parts of myself they hadn't earned. Jason approached, trying to smile like nothing was wrong. Hey, you made it. Of course, I said. Wouldn't miss it. He looked at Olivia, then at me, then at the kids. His smile faltered. Did you, get the schedule? We've got group photos at noon, barbecue at 1, games after. I got it, I said. But before that, I need everyone inside for a quick announcement. Jason's eyes narrowed. Announcement? Yep. Shouldn't take more than 10 minutes. Mom and Dad appeared on the porch, dressed like a J.Crew ad, trying to play it cool. I gave them a polite nod. Inside, cousins, aunts, and uncles were milling around the kitchen, sipping lemonade and catching up like nothing had ever happened. I stepped onto the coffee table in the living room and clapped twice. Hey everyone. Quick housekeeping before we get into the fun stuff. Chatter died down. Eyes turned to me. I'm glad you're all here. It's great to see everyone under one roof again, especially this roof. A few polite chuckles. I smiled. This cabin has meant a lot to all of us over the years. And as most of you know, it was left to the grandchildren by our grandfather. What you might not know is that, for the past 10 years, I've been solely responsible for maintaining, funding, and managing it under a legal LLC. Murmurs. Jason shifted uncomfortably near the fireplace. I continued. That includes taxes, repairs, insurance, utilities, snow removal, and structural upkeep. I've spent just under $50,000 of my own money keeping it standing, and another 1,000 hours of labor. I pulled out printed copies of the report I'd sent earlier in the year and began handing them out. Until today, I've never asked for reimbursement, never asked for credit. But now that the cabin is being used for a large family event, with guests I didn't invite, and without prior approval, I'm updating my terms. Dead silence. Jason opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. This weekend's gathering is permitted, of course. But moving forward, all family members wishing to use the cabin, individually or for group events, will need to submit a written request and sign a usage agreement. Just like any other managed property. Fair, professional, transparent. Mom's voice trembled. Ethan, this isn't necessary. It is, I said calmly. You made it necessary. Olivia stepped forward and began distributing digital access codes via QR cards. Please scan these on your phones, she said smoothly. They'll log your attendance and activate the smart lock system. Anyone who doesn't register will not have access to the property after this weekend. Dad cleared his throat. This is ridiculous. You're treating us like tenants. No, I said. I'm treating you like adults. I let that hang in the air. Jason turned red. This isn't what Grandpa wanted. Grandpa wanted us to share it. He didn't want one person to be used while everyone else sat back. If you want shared ownership, I'm happy to sell portions of the LLC. We can draft a schedule, split the costs, and go from there. And if we don't, he asked bitterly, then you visit when invited. Like guests. The next 30 minutes were chaos. Some relatives were understanding, quietly respectful, even supportive. A few were clearly uncomfortable. One of my cousins hugged me and said, "About time someone said it." Jason stormed outside halfway through. Mom cried, but didn't say a word. Dad stared at me like he didn't recognize the man standing in front of him. But I didn't flinch. Not once. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't managing their emotions. I was managing my own boundaries. The rest of the weekend went smoothly, surprisingly. The barbecue happened. The games were played. Zoe beat everyone at checkers. Max jumped off the dock fully clothed. Olivia sat beside me on the porch swing as we watched the sun set, and she squeezed my hand without saying a word. When it was time to leave, Jason approached me in the driveway. You embarrassed me. I met his eyes. You excluded me. And my kids. I said I was sorry. You never said that. You said you get it now. That's not the same. He clenched his jaw. I softened just a little. I'm not trying to ruin anything, Jason. I'm just done pretending I owe everyone free access to the life I built without them. He didn't respond. And that was fine. He got in his car and left. That night, I locked the cabin from my phone. Security armed. Utilities adjusted. Access revoked. And as I tucked Zoe and Max into bed back home, I kissed their foreheads and whispered, "We're not the backup plan anymore." The fallout was quiet. No more group chat messages. No sudden invitations. Just silence. And peace. And that was the best revenge of all. Letting go of a family that only wanted me when I was useful, and building one where I was wanted for who I was. I didn't burn the bridge. I just built a better house on the other side of the river. And this time, the foundation was mine.